Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to today's webinar. We're looking at emailing statements. It's our advanced session, or part two. Hopefully you've had a chance to attend part one, where we looked at the very basics of setting up email settings for statements and how you go about sending them out. If you haven't had a chance to attend that or watch the recording, then watch out for your follow-up email, as it will be included. So there's a link to all of our recordings on there, so you'll be able to catch up that way. So this is part two. We're looking at the advanced settings in today's session. Now, just before we get started with today's session, a little bit of housekeeping. So as usual, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one and you've enabled it, it will just automatically be muted, and you'll find you can't unmute yourself, so you can't talk to us during the session. We found that very disruptive in the past. So if you've got any questions for us today, I'm joined by Tina and Jackie, who are on hand sat there in the background to answer any questions that you might have. So you just need to type them into the questions panel. Questions panel you should see in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. If you can't currently see that, all you need to do on your toolbar is click the little icon, the one that looks like the speech bubble containing the question mark. Give it a click. You should get that little box in the bottom right hand corner, and that's your way of communicating with us. So any questions or comments, anything you're not sure of, please pop it in there, click send, and either Jackie or Tina will pick that up for you. You never know, I might get involved with that by myself as well at some point. You can download a copy of today's slides as well. So certainly people in the past have requested those. So we do make them available. They will be available to you afterwards as well. So if you don't get a chance to download them today, or you lose the copy, or you're working from a different PC and you want to copy them, just watch out for your follow-up email, and it will include the link that you need, which will take you across to our Sage City area of our website, where you'll be able to view recordings, download the handout, and also there'll be a copy of today's Q&A on there as well, or some of the more common questions and answers anyway. So we'll make that available to you as well. That email should be with you around about an hour after we finish today. Right, now this is what we're going to be covering today, and hopefully everyone saw the reminder that came at about 12 o'clock advising you what we are covering and also what we're not covering in today's session. So what we are covering is what's on screen. So we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction to emailing out statements. We're then going to run through a series of demonstrations as well, and I've included a couple of extra bits at the beginning there, just as a few of the questions we got last time were looking, almost touching on the very basics. So what if it goes wrong? How can I get around that? So we're going to look at taking a layouts only backup, changing the report properties and saving your layout, just in case you haven't already amended one of the standard layouts. And then we'll run through the demo looking at the email settings themselves and the advanced settings and the send immediately option. Once we finish the demos, we'll just explain more about the additional support. Now, what we aren't covering today is we aren't specifically covering webmail and SMTP settings. If you need that, the link was included in your reminder email. There's information in our help center on how you go about setting that side of it up. So as I say, we're going to try and stick to the agenda today, just to stick with almost like the basics of the advanced settings within the report designer. So we'll get started. So as we mentioned in session one, sending out and emailing documents from Sage 50, it should be very straightforward. You can send invoices, orders, remittances, and also, as we're looking at today, completing your statement run should be a quick and simple task. We did do a bit of a poll last time, and for those of you that were there, you'll know that a decent percentage of people were using email only. Some were sending some via email, some were printing some, and some were just purely print. So sending via email can be a big time saver, but also quite a sort of a cost saver as well. So you're not paying for postage, you're not paying for stationery, the time it takes to print them out, pop them in envelopes, etc. So some really good savings to be made with emailing out. Now, there are two areas where you can amend and apply email settings against your statement layout. We covered email defaults in part one, so that's already available via the recording. Today, part two, our advanced session, we're looking at amending and applying email settings within the report designer itself. So actually editing the layout to look at the email settings. I've put a note on there just to remind you, and it's something I would encourage you to do. If you're ever going to amend a report or amend one of your layouts, take a layouts only backup first. And I'll run through that in just a moment so you can see what that looks like. It means that if you make a mess of it, you do something you shouldn't, or it works in a slightly different way afterwards, or maybe it's not calculating something in the way you expected, you can always restore back. So you can restore that layouts only backup without it impacting on your data. So we'll include that in the demonstrations that we're going to cover. So we'll get stuck into some demonstrations. It's nearly all demonstration, this specific webinar. Loads to cover. I'm sure you'll have loads of questions along the way as well, but do bear with me because we are going to try and cover the majority of the settings in there. So we'll try and give you some examples of those as well, and you'll see that in the demo today. You want to take notes, fine, but remember all of the detailed information, it's available in our help center, and the recording of today's session will be made available afterwards. I know we often get feedback. Some people will say it's too slow, the webinar. Others will say that's too much to take in. I can't keep up. I've tried to follow through. So do remember, you'll have the recording available afterwards. And if you want to watch it a little bit quicker or keep pausing it while you're following along, you can do that. Right, so we're going to start with the very basics, taking a layouts only backup, so covering your back almost. So I'll share my screen, we'll get stuck in. Right, you should see my desktop at that point, and to take a layouts only backup, and I'm sure you are familiar with backing up, but how many of you will actually take a layouts only backup? Layouts are not something you're going to amend that often, so you probably don't need to include them in your daily backup. You'll probably back up data files only. To take a layouts only backup, nice and straightforward, into File, Backup, and then we've got an option here, Layout Templates. That's all we need selected. So for this particular type of backup, layouts only, that's the only one I want ticked. I'm going to give it a file name, Sage Layouts, and I'm just going to pop mine on my desktop. Obviously, you can browse wherever you want to include it. Now, it's going to back up all of your layouts, so things like your invoice layouts, if you've got a separate credit note one, if you use the order processing, remittances, would include your letters as well in amongst that, as well as obviously your statement layouts. So I just click OK. Obviously, it mentions there that I've not included any data files as part of this backup. Do I want to continue? Yes, I do. Obviously, normally, the reason for that is just in case you haven't selected your data files, but we're well aware of that one. So we're just going to click yes to continue, and we'll let it take the backup. Now, it is very quick in my example. Should be that quick on yours as well, because it is just layouts that you're backing up. If you're including reports, you might do a reports only backup. Again, you probably don't amend reports that often. So if you're about to, or you have done that, back it up. So it tells us the backup's been successful. Click OK, that's it done. Now that means if I go into edit a layout or I delete a layout or anything like that, I can easily be up and running again by restoring my layouts back to that point in time. So that's the first one. Next, we're going to go into statements itself. So I'm just going to highlight this one customer on my list. You might recognize this list of customers from 2 weeks ago if you were on the session. So we'll highlight the first one. And I'm going to go into documents or reports. And again, as I mentioned in that session, I've got a really low resolution set on my monitor today, just to hopefully make things a little bit bigger so you can see them a little bit clearer. So my statements I would access via this grouped icon. You probably will have it listed as a separate icon. So into statements, and the one I'm going to choose today, I've already flagged it, so it's flagged as one of my favorites. It's just the standard one. So the second one on the list. So if you've got yours listed and you want it to be flagged as a favorite, just click on the star. And all that means is when you first come into that area, it's only going to list the ones that are flagged as a favorite. So that's the one I'm going to use for the demo today. We'll highlight it. I'm going to click the email option. Obviously, I can click email at the top as well. I want to click that option. Criteria pops up. I'm just going to accept that. Click OK. And I get this message, and this is a message you would have seen in part 1 as well. No email settings were detected. Would you like to apply email settings? Now, if I click yes, it takes me across to the email defaults, which is what we covered in part 1. So that's covered in the recording that's already available. So we're just going to cancel out of that one. Now, if I click no, this is the message I would have got. So it tells me the email settings for this report are not fully configured. Do you want to send the entire report as an attachment? So this is the kind of message you're going to get if you try and output a profit loss, a balance sheet, trial balance, that type of thing. There are no email settings configured. So the entire report, and that might be multiple statements in this instance, they would just be bundled into one document and they would be attached to a single email, and you would fill in the details yourself. I'm just going to click no at this stage. And then what we're going to do is, so you've now seen there's no email settings so far. We're going to highlight our layout and we're going to go into edit at the top. Now that takes us into the report designer. Now, if you've never touched the report designer, we've got Tina in the background today. Tina has done a series of report design webinars. So if you want to learn the basics about adding a logo, adding a bit of text, a variable, that type of thing, then again, check out our report design webinars. So we're not messing around with the design of the statement today. We're just looking at the email settings. Right, now the first thing I'm going to do, because it's a standard layout, what I want to do is I'm going to go into the report menu at the top, and I'm going to go into report properties, and I'm just going to change the report name. So from the standard one that comes up, describing the stationery that it's designed for, I'm just going to put my name in. And what I'll do is in the description, I'll just leave that as it is, and we'll click OK. So I've changed it slightly. The other thing I'm going to do as well, because it's a standard layout, and standard layouts, you can't save any changes against the standard layout. What you've got to do is do a save as. So when we go to the file menu, I'm going to click save as, and I'll also put my name in there as well as the name of my layout. Actually, we'll call it Michael Statement, and we'll just save that. And that's it done. So that's now the one I'm working on. If I just quickly close out of the report designer, I'm going to go back into the layouts folder, and I need to just quickly find it on the list. So there it is there. So I'm going to flag that one as my favorite as well. Pop back to favorites, and this is the one I'm going to be working on. Right, let's start looking at the email settings at that stage. I just wanted to cover those basic steps, hopefully just to preempt maybe some of those questions that those of you that have never touched report design before will maybe not be familiar with. So we highlight our layout. We're going to go into edit at the top. Again, that will take us back into the report designer. So we can see the design of our layout. And we're going to go back to the report menu and into email settings. Right, so what I'll do is I'm going to quickly run through the fields over the next however many minutes. We'll see how long that takes us. We'll probably pick up some questions along the way as well. So first option, email message should contain. Various options on there. And we're going to come back to this one a little bit later on. So we'll run through the other settings first. To box. So where do you want it to pick up the email address from, or is it you just want to key in an email address? What we want to do is when we're emailing it, we want it to pick up the email address from the customer's account. So we click to, and in this bottom box, we're going to click add. And then the fields that we're after, just nice and simple. We're looking for, in this case, the sales ledger, which refers to your customer accounts, essentially, your list of customers. And within the customer's account, we want it to pick up email or the first email address that's recorded in the account. So if I just scroll all the way down, I could have pressed E on the keyboard. You'll see mine goes email, then email 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, and 6, you'll only have those options available to you if you run version 29. So we're just going to choose email, this one here. Okay, that. In fact, we'll just double click it. It'll pop it in here, sales ledger email, and we'll just okay that. Now, one of the advantages of amending your email settings in here is that you can actually set it to multiple email addresses. That's something you couldn't do when we covered the email defaults in part 1. So if we did want to maybe send it to email address number 2 as well, we can click add. Again, come down to this field section, go down to sales ledger, and we're looking for this time email 2. So I could select that, just double click it, pops it into here. So sales ledger being your table name, email 2 being the actual field itself. We just okay that. You can see we've got them both in there at that point. So I'll just okay that. So basically when we're outputting our statements using this layout, it's going to pick up email address 1 and email address 2. We can enter a CC address. So if you want to send a copy of this to maybe a mailbox, we can do similar for a BCC address, so blind carbon copy. Again, it might be the case that you want to send a copy to yourself. If I needed to, I could just type in an email address into that one, or I could get it to pick it up from somewhere. If I wanted to go to my company's email address, for instance, I've got that set within my company settings, I could get it to pick that up. Or, as I say, alternatively, I could just type that straight in. I'm just going to leave that as is, though. Subject line, from the from box. Now that's really only applicable to SMTP. So again, that's something that we might come back to in a separate webinar, or it might be that we make that information available as a video or just refer you to the help center, but we're not covering that specifically in the session today. We then come to the subject line. Now the subject line, it could just be simple text that you want to type in. So it's currently blank at the moment. So you could add text, or you could do a mixture of text plus data field information. So what we're going to do at this stage, we'll just type monthly statement. Actually, I should have entered that on the other screen. I'll just put that in quotes. We'll leave it at that. So monthly statement, we'll okay that. So when we generate our email, it's going to pick up 2 email addresses, assuming you've got them entered within the record, and we've got a subject line as well. Now we can make it a bit more complex, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on. So we could pop an expression in there to make it a bit more complex. So that's the top section. Next, we come down to how should the report be sent. So you can send it as plain text, or you can send the report as an attachment. Now in here, something you couldn't do in the email defaults, which we covered in part 1, is that you can amend the text that appears in the body of the email. So this is just the standard information. You could pop something in there if you wanted to. The attachment format, it will default to PDF. You'll see there's 10 options on there. So you can choose if you want to change that, but PDF, it's normally what we recommend, normally probably what your customers would expect to receive as well. And then you've also got the file name as well. Now the file name, it will pick up the description of the report. So can you remember that description we left us, and it described what was included on the statement itself. So you'd probably want to change that. So if you go into file name, we could leave it set to report description. And we will come back to this a little bit later on as well. But we'll just leave it set to that for the time being. So in my case, it would have been, for instance, 11-inch two-part statement grouped and O/S items. But we'll come back to that a little bit later on. We'll just leave it set as is for the time being. You could essentially make it, call it whatever you want, even just pop in a bit of text if you wanted to. You've got options for requesting a read receipt for the message and request a delivery receipt. And then we've got the send options as well. Now it will default to send emails immediately. But what I'm going to do for the time being, and this is something we always encourage people, if you're new to sending it out, you probably want to build up your confidence a little bit initially. So what we'll do is we're going to save emails to mailbox. I'm integrating with Outlook today as well. So I'm going to select that from the drop down. So that's the basic settings at this stage within the report designer. So I'm just going to OK that. And because I've already saved my layout with a different file name, I'm just going to go to File, this time Save. If your save's grayed out, it's just you're amending a default layout and you're going to need to save it with a different file name. So I'll just save the changes in my case. Now let's have a look at see what that actually looks like. So just going back to customers, I've only got the once. In fact, I'll do two, just so you can see what it looks like. So we'll highlight two customers, come into statements again, choose my layout, and I'm just going to output straight to email. I'll just accept the default criteria. It tells me it's successfully output to email. We'll OK that. Ignore the communication history at this stage. And if I go into Outlook, you can see in this case, we've got the one email at this stage. Let's just open it. And that's what it's, at this stage, that's what it's going to look like. So you can see it's pulled that text through. It's got michael.pdf, which is, it's pulling through that description that I put on that report a little bit earlier. It's pulling through the subject, and it's pulled through the two email addresses from that first customer. So what it means is by saving it to the mailbox first of all, it means I can view that email. So I'm just coming into Outlook, I'm in drafts, and I can amend anything I want. So maybe I want to put an additional message in at the point of sending. All I would need to do at that point is click send, and that would be it done. Off it goes. So nice and easy. Let's go back to Sage again. Right, we're going to go back to Sage at this stage. And we'll go back into, excuse me, we're going to go back into our layout. I'm going to click edit at the top. Right. Within our layout, we're going to go into report, email settings. We'll quickly pick up on this option at the top. So we sent the entire report. That's what we'd set. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to choose this group at the bottom. So I want it to split the email. So if I select two customers, I want two emails to be generated. So their individual statement will send to the individual customer. Now, by default, from this drop down, basically you'll choose the highest number group. So that's basically the guidance on that one. I'm not going to go into the details of what they are. Just by default, you will choose it'll say group 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on your layout. You may even have more. But we're just going to choose group 4. We'll leave it set to that one. Now, the other options we want to look at are, first of all, the subject. So the common question, right? I don't want it just to say monthly statement. I want it to pull some other information through. So when we click into this option, you can see we've got an expression editor. So what do we want it to say? Do we want it to say monthly statement? Do we want it to say our company name? Do we want it to pull something else through? And some of the most common expressions, if I just cancel out of that for a moment, there is, I'm going to quickly show you this one. If I get back to my desktop, I've got it here. So there is an article in our help center which has common email subject expressions. Now, there's loads of advice on building expressions within the report designer, but this article, and I'll get one of them to pop it into the chat box for me, just so that you've got that link. It's nice and easy to find anywhere within the help center, but if either Tina or Jackie could pop that link into the chat box for me, and you'll have the link that you need then. But this article from our help center, it will contain common expressions. Now, the two statement ones are at the bottom of this section. So for instance, I might want this one. So I might want it not just to say company name and the word statement, but I might want the report date on there as well. So I'll just highlight that and copy it. And then I'll go back into my Sage, back into the report menu and email settings, and back into the subject line. I'm going to clear what's here. So I don't just want it to say monthly statement now. What I want it to do, if I just paste that in, I want it to pull through my company name. Now I could add that as text. Obviously my company name. So in the background, I can't remember what I called my company now. Let's just say it was called Sage Demos. So I could have that be pulled through from my company preferences area, which is what this is, company.name. Or I could just enter that as text and say, right, Sage Demos dash statement, because this is a bit of text, this one, and then I want it to pull through the report date. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So all I've done there is I've copied that from the Help Center article and I've pasted it in. So the common ones are on that article. So we'll just OK that. Now we'll OK that and we'll save the changes. And we'll go and have a look at what happens this time for the subject line. So go back to Sage. I'll highlight the two again, back into statements, select my layout, and we'll output to email. OK that. Tells me it's successfully output to email. And if I go back to my Outlook, into drafts, you can see now we've got, well, it must be my company name, demo statement adv, so far advanced. Then it says the word statement, and then it's got the date on there, etc. So we have a quick look at it. And there's loads of different options you can choose for this. So I might even want to include the time, you might not. It's up to you what you include on that. So have a good look through that article that hopefully we shared the link for you. So it's in there. The common expressions that you might use are on there. So it's just a case of copy and paste rather than you try to build it yourself. So what we'll do is we're going to we'll change it slightly. Right, let's just delete that one for the time being. And we'll go back into my Sage. We'll highlight our layouts, click edit. Let's go back into, again, the report designer. What I'll also quickly do, I'm just going to copy, I'll just make it, I'll use this one just to make it a little bit clearer. So we'll copy that. We'll pop that one into the statement. Into the subject line, I should say. So into reports, email settings, subject. I'll just clear what's there. And a bit like before, we just copied it, right click in the box and paste. So we now don't even include any date in there. But there's loads of various options. If you think there's something specific that you want and you're not sure how to do that, just get in touch with our support team. They should be able to give you a little bit of advice on that. So that's the subject line. Obviously, we've got the body text. So if you want to specifically put some text in there, so if you're sending immediately, which we'll be looking at a little bit later on, you're not going to have the opportunity to then amend that text. There may be a specific message that you want to include for this month's set of statements. So you can always keep coming in and amending these options if necessary. Right, okay, we'll just leave that one as is. We're going to come on to the file name next. So again, we've just says report description there at the moment. If I want to change that, nice and easy. So I might want to put some, let's see, what could I put? I might want to just call it statement. Do I want it to pull through the description of the statement? What do I want to call it? And again, there's various options that you could use for that. I'm just going to leave it as is though. Now we're going to come back to this option at the bottom a little bit later on. Something we have covered in the part 1 session as well. So just want to quickly look at email attachments as well. So this is a nice simple option. Is there anything else you want to attach to that statement? So do you want to send out a catalogue, a sales list? Maybe you've got details of special offers that you want to include. Maybe details of new services you offer or products, new product range. You want to provide details of that. So if you've got any documents like that that you want to send, what you can do is just come into the email attachments, add files, and then it's just a case of you browsing for that. So I just choose that price list file as an example. And we'll click open. Now, one thing to be aware of that, it doesn't embed the document itself into your layout. What it does is it remembers the path. And that means if I'm always working from my PC, I could update that file and the next time I email out, it will pull through the latest edition of that. However, if there's, let's say, myself and one of my colleagues is sending it, we're doing it from different PCs. For this to work, we must have the same path to the document. So you'll see in my case, because I've copied it from my desktop, it's part of the path is it refers to that. So do be aware of that one. But I'll just OK that. I'll just do the one document. We'll go to File and Save. And if we just close out of that, we'll just do this one customer at the top. So back into statements. Select our layout. So this one, and I'm going to output to email. Just OK that. It tells me it's been successfully output. So I'll ignore the communication history. And in my drafts folder, I'll just open that, as well as my statement, which has picked up the description of the layout itself. So I've obviously popped my name in earlier, but it's also attached that price list that we attached as well. So that makes it nice and easy. But again, at this stage, we are saving it to our drafts folder. So we're outputting it to essentially to our mailbox rather than sending it immediately. So if I was happy with that, just click send, and obviously that's it done at that point. Now, if I do want it to send immediately, go back into Sage. I'll just highlight my layout again. back into the report designer, into report. Hopefully you're remembering the steps now, which is why I want to keep almost like repetition, just to try and ingrain that. So we're into the report designer, into the report menu, into email settings, and this time we'll just set it to send emails immediately. Again, okay that. So if you do want to take these little steps where maybe you're making one change, trying it, that's exactly what I'm doing today. Make sure, rather than just apply 5, 6, 7 changes all at the same time and thinking, why can I not get it to quite work? Just one thing at a time. Sometimes one of the best options, just to try it as well, is if you can set up a dummy customer and maybe a dummy transaction as well, that you can always delete afterwards. Pop those in your accounts and maybe just output an email to that dummy account. Maybe pop in a private email address that if you've got one. So you can see it sends it, and you can see what it looks like when it's received. So that's a good way of testing that email option. When you're ready and you know it's working, you can then just go and delete the transaction that you've posted against that dummy account. And then if needed, maybe flag the account as being inactive or something along those lines. Anyway, we've got that one set. So we'll just go to File and Save. We'll close out. And this time, if we again output to email, just okay that. Tells me it's successfully output to email. And this time, if we go back into, if I go back to Outlook, there's nothing in the drafts folder this time. If I go into sent items, you'll see it there. So we can see it is a live session, 2:36 this afternoon. So I've literally just sent that one. So it's generating it and automatically sending it. So if you're doing even just an individual statement that you might be generating, it's a good little time saver. You don't need to come into Outlook, view it, and then click send. It just does it automatically. Right, okay. Any questions at this stage? I'm just going to pause for a moment. I'm just going to mute my line for a moment. And then if you've got any questions, pop them in there. I'll just go back to my Sage screen just for a moment. And then if you've got any questions, if you want to quickly start popping them in, we'll try and pick some up. And we'll just quickly finish off the demos in just a moment as well. Okay, I still see the questions coming through there. So Tina and Jackie are quickly picking those up. So I think we're just about on top of those. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into the sending of statements and modifying your layouts, etc. Within Sage Accounts and some of those, what we term more the advanced settings. These email settings have been around for quite some time, being able to do this. I say quite some time, many years. But recently, just to simplify things, we did add the email defaults, which is available via the settings menu within your software, just to try and make things that a bit simpler. Some people can feel a little bit overwhelmed when they go into the report designer. But if report designer is something that's maybe sparked your imagination a little bit, as I say, Tina's run some sessions historically on the report design side of the software. So if you are interested, do check those out as well. Right, okay, let's pop back to the slides. So as you can see, we've looked at taking a layouts only backup. Now what that's going to mean, and actually I'll quickly demonstrate this one for you as well. So let's go back to my screen. So let's say we've now made our amends. Let's say we want to include this one. We've made some amends. We know that one's maybe working how we like. Let's take another layouts only backup. I can never stress this one enough. So we'll quickly do a backup of that one. We'll do layouts only again. I'm going to call it Sage Layouts 2 this time round. Again, I'll pop it onto the desktop, just OK that. Click yes to the prompt. It'll quickly create that for me. And what it means is, if let's say you were, or maybe one of your colleagues, you've then gone in, you've edited your layout, you've made a right mess of it, or even you've come along and maybe you've deleted it. So rather than have to start again with what we covered in the session today, what it means is I could restore that layouts only backup. So I go to File, Restore, into Browse, and on my desktop, I've got that one there that we literally just taken. Select it, open, OK that. It does prompt me that it will overwrite any data held in my current company. Because it's a layouts only backup, I'm just going to continue with that one. So yes to that. OK, the restore message. Quickly log back in. And if we go back to customers, and then into statements, I'm back where I was. So it means that if it had been deleted in error or made a right mess of it, very little downtime, you restore that layouts only backup, you're up and running again. Hope that makes sense. So as normal, cover your back, take that layouts only backup before you start amending email settings as well, just in case you amend your own layout and it doesn't quite go to plan. You can always then restore that back. Right, let's pop back to the slides. So it brings us to the end of what we'd planned to cover. So hopefully you found that quite interesting, giving maybe a little bit of food for thought. So as you've seen, emailing statements, easy to do that from Sage, and your other documents as well for that matter. You can send them individually or send them in bulk, something that we've covered in the previous session as well. A number of layouts contained within the software do contain default settings to work with Microsoft Outlook. And when we asked about what email software you were running last time, it was in the region of about 80 to 90% of you were using Outlook. If you're using a layout that has no default settings, which is what we started with at the beginning of the session, very easy to amend that. So remember, there are two areas that you can amend and apply email settings. One is email defaults, which is what we covered in part 1, and also via the report designer, which is what we covered today. If anyone's using webmail, so Gmail, Hotmail, anything like that, if you need advice on configuring that, so entering your SMTP settings, some of them are pre-configured, so you'll be able to select them from the drop-down. Others, you will need to look up your SMTP settings, and that information you'll find readily available within our help center as well. Most of the webmail software that you're likely to use will be covered, so we've got you covered there as well, but that's all available via our help center. Upcoming webinars, well, we've got loads of sessions still booked in at the moment. We're just about to start planning in the March sessions as well. They'll be available to book onto soon. If you haven't yet attended a version 29 session, we're in the process of rolling that out at the moment, version 29. So keep an eye out for any emails or messages in your software relating to that to tell you it's now available. If you want to see the features in action, please get yourself signed up for one of our sessions. We also got year-end booked in and also covering the basics of backing up as well. It's surprising how many people don't really understand backing up. So we are going to cover the basics of that as well. But also emailing documents, we've already covered email statements, and today we cover the advanced session. Emailing invoices we covered last week, and we'll be covering a similar content as what we covered today for the advanced session for emailing invoices as well. That's Wednesday next week at 2. If you're interested in attending any of our sessions, get yourself signed up. Link will be included on your follow-up email. So just in case you're about to leave, I'm going to quickly thank you for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. Let us know though. There'll be a short exit survey pop up as you leave the session today. Always love to read the comments that you leave behind. And also any ideas that you have on topics you'd like to see covered. We love reading about those as well. Follow-up email, it will be with you in round about an hour's time. By the time you get that, the recording of today's session should be available. So you can watch that, have a bit of a recap, share it with your colleagues if needed, but also there'll be the links included so you can sign up for other future webinars and also watch other recordings as well. Now the questions appear to be up to date, so we'll just give it about another 30 seconds or so before we end the webinar. So if you're about to leave, many thanks. Hopefully we'll see you again. If anyone's hanging around and has a question that they may be busy typing in, well, as I say, we'll just hang around for about another 30 seconds or so just to see if any others do come through, but I think we've caught up there. So we'll see if any do come through. Otherwise, we'll end the session at that point. Okay, so it looks like the questions have dried up. So if you do think of anything afterwards, obviously have a look at the information in the help center. It's hopefully got everything in there that you could need. If you're not sure beyond that, get in touch with our support team. But otherwise, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some future webinars. Many thanks.